Hey guys! Tonight we step softly into the drifting sands of an empire that once stretched wider than your Wi-Fi coverage and moved faster than your caffeine-rushed commute. You're headed out now, right into the dry breath of the Persian plateau, sandals thudding quietly along a road so straight and stubborn it cuts across valleys and hills like it's got somewhere to be. This is the Royal Road. No, not a fantasy novel title, but the literal artery of the mighty Achaemenid Empire. It's long, like 2,600 kilometers long, kind of long. From Sardis in Lydia all the way to Susa near the Persian Gulf. The road is sun-baked, graveled in some places, packed with crushed stone in others, and occasionally interrupted by a stubborn goat who doesn't care that you're on royal business. The year is, well, it depends, because the road lived for centuries. But let's settle into the cozy folds of around 500 BCE. That's Darius the Great's time, an empire builder, road lover, micromanager extraordinaire. You probably wouldn't survive his inbox. Dust kicks at your heels as you march eastward. The sandals are thin, too thin probably for the jagged pebbles. But that's what you get when you're not royalty. Around you, the wind rustles low shrubs that smell faintly medicinal, like someone's cooking up a strange tea just out of sight. The sky above is vast, pale, and empty, except for a falcon gliding far too confidently. And the road, always the road, is suspiciously straight, as if even the land dared not curve in the face of imperial will. No GPS, no survey drones, just engineers with string, intuition, and an unhealthy obsession with symmetry. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to see where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pass a group of men on camels, their loads jingling with bronze cups and wrapped scrolls. Traders, likely. They give you a nod. You don't nod back. Not because you're rude, but because you're already sweating and need to conserve energy. Persian couriers aren't paid to socialize. They're paid to move. See, the Royal Road wasn't built for the average sheep herder or spice vendor. It was an imperial nervous system. Couriers, called ongaros in Greek, though the Persians probably called them something more impressive, ran, rode, and marched these routes day and night. According to Herodotus, messages traveled faster on this road than a bad rumor at a royal banquet. And you, tonight, are slipping into the sandals of one of these messengers. You've got a slim leather pouch tucked inside your robe. It's sealed with wax, pressed with the royal emblem. If that wax breaks before it reaches the satrap in Ecbatana, your head could, metaphorically or literally, roll. But let's not dwell on that. It's bedtime, after all. The landscape rolls slowly. On either side of the road, tufts of dry grass wave like sleepy hands. Here and there, a ruined waypost looms. A carved stone marker with distances you can't read but pretend to understand anyway. You imagine a courier centuries ago pausing here too, resting his blistered feet, spitting out sand. That's the thing. This road remembers. Every dusted step you take tonight echoes those who came before. Men with letters, kings with plans, spies with secrets, traitors with figs, so many figs. There's something oddly comforting about it. One foot in front of the other. Step, breathe. Step, breathe.
Section high. The stars emerge in lazy clusters, as if they too are stretching after a long day. Overhead, the constellations rearrange themselves into stories you'll never quite remember. Tales of gods, lions, and fishermen whose nets reached into the sky. You keep walking, because that's what you do. The road is not a thing you follow. It's a thing you become. You pass a stone column, half buried in the sand, its surface smoothed by time and wind. Once it marked something official, perhaps the boundary between two satrapies or the distance to the next capital. Now it's just another ghost, too dignified to ask for attention. But you don't need directions. Couriers are trained to feel the road. You know when a bend is coming before it curves. You smell the water long before the next well. You can sense a break in the earth by the way the birds fly above it. This isn't magic, it's repetition. You are part of the whisper network now. No, not the scandalous one in your village. This is different. This is the silent pulse of empire. The Achaemenid kings, especially Darius I, were obsessed with control. Not the loud kind, no pounding drums or gold-studded proclamations shouted from balconies. No, their control came quietly, through parchment, through speed, through you. Messages moved across the empire faster than rebellions could organize, faster than rumors could rot. This is what made Persia so efficient, so terrifying to its enemies. They didn't just have armies, they had updates. Constant, accurate, terrifyingly swift updates. You scratch your ear. The wind has shifted slightly, carrying the scent of something foreign. Cooked meat, maybe lamb? You glance toward the hills, but see nothing. Just shadows and the suggestion of a fire somewhere far off. Could be a trader's camp, could be a spy. Historians still argue whether Persia's courier system was used more for military coordination or internal surveillance. It was both, of course. Messages traveled from king to satrap to commander to priest, ensuring not just obedience, but synchronized obedience. Every wheel turned in unison, like the cogs in an oversized, dust-covered timepiece. You shift your pouch, feeling the wax seal bump against your ribs. This one's not military, probably administrative. But you never ask. That's the golden rule of the road. Deliver, don't discuss. Still, you wonder sometimes, what's in this one? A tax edict? A marriage proposal? A declaration of war? Or maybe it's a royal thank you card for a satrap who sent particularly nice dates. It could happen. Up ahead, you spot something odd. 3 small mounds rising from the earth. Burial sites. You've seen dozens before, but these feel recent. A few stones have been arranged in a neat pattern. Someone cared. You stop for a moment. Not long. Just long enough to wonder whether they were couriers too. Caught in a flood, a raid, or perhaps just worn down by the road's constant whisper. Keep going, keep going, keep going.
There are no monuments to men like you, no statues, no names carved into marble. But the empire doesn't work without you. It's held together not by gold or blood, but by legs, lungs, and the unbreakable seal of silence. You walk on. Not far now, a change in the terrain tells you you're approaching another post station. This one will be bigger. The Persians space them out every 25 to 30 kilometers, depending on the terrain. That's how far a rider could go at full gallop before the horse collapsed or the rider did. You're on foot tonight, but others are not. Somewhere behind you, someone is riding hard. You hear it faintly, the dull, rhythmic thud of hooves. Not fast enough to be military.
The moon is lower now, and the wind has turned cooler, brushing against your skin like a question you'd rather not answer. You pull your cloak tighter, adjust the strap on your pouch, and fall back into the pace you know best. It's not quite a march, not quite a stroll, somewhere in between, like a lullaby for your legs. You're heading east, towards Susa, that much you know. The capital sleeps behind its walls of polished brick and gold-leafed gates, but its dreams ride on the backs of couriers like you. The message you carry is its breath, sent out across the desert to keep the heart of the empire beating in time. Just before dawn, the air shifts again. This time you catch it instantly. A new scent. Sharp, spicy, faintly citrusy. You pause, lean forward slightly. Yes, there it is. Coriander. Not growing, no. It's been crushed, scattered. A trail. This is no accident. This is scent coding. Historians still argue whether Persian couriers used aromatic signals intentionally or if they were simply the byproduct of traders' habits and campfires. But you've been out here long enough to know better. This isn't coincidence. Someone left this scent to mark the path ahead. Someone who knew you'd come this way. Someone thinking 5 messengers ahead. It's one of the quieter secrets of the Achaemenid system. The empire's relay posts were built with uncanny regularity, their placements as exact as the king's beard trim. But between those points, scent became your compass. You walk faster now, following the subtle line of coriander through the scrub and rock. In the faint blue of early morning, the trail is invisible to the eye, but not to your nose. A bird cries out in the distance, one of those strange scraping desert calls, like a rusted hinge blown open by wind. You ignore it. You're focused. Because if the coriander's here, then the next post station should be less than half a day's walk. And sure enough, just over the ridge, you spot the low walls and curved roof of the relay house. This one's older, maybe even from the time of Cyrus the Great. The walls are carved with cuneiform, though half the script is lost to sun and rain. The station keeper is outside already, yawning into the palm of his hand. He sees you and waves lazily. Inside, a pot of barley porridge simmers over a low fire. You nod to the others, 2 young couriers napping on mats, a third playing a game with marked stones. No one speaks. You don't need to. The rhythm is sacred here. Arrive, rest, refuel, relay, repeat. You check the station board. There's a note, scrawled with a rush of urgency and pinned with a copper nail. It reads, "River crossing delayed. East bank route recommended. Marked with rose ash." You exhale slowly. Rose ash. That one's rare. Deliberate. Smells sweet at first, then faintly metallic. Not easy to make. Which means this message, whatever you're carrying, is worth more than the usual grain tallies or tax updates. You've been upgraded without knowing it. Outside, the sun breaks across the hills like someone peeled back the sky. The world floods with warmth, and the trail ahead glows faintly under the new light. You eat quickly,
Just a handful of porridge, a sip of watered wine, and a date that tastes like forgotten summer. Then you're on the move again. The new trail is slower, more winding, but it hugs the land safely. No river crossings, no muddy embankments. Just a steady path, marked now and then with the unmistakable trace of rose ash, scattered like breadcrumbs by someone who knows your pace. This is a form of communication too, just quieter. The empire speaks not only in words, but in gestures, a mark on a stone, a shift in a trail, a scent in the breeze. It's like being part of a great, invisible choreography. You begin to hum to yourself, a song from your childhood maybe, something about a lazy goat and an impatient boy. It doesn't matter. The rhythm helps. You reach a place where the path splits. No markers. You pause. This is the test. You inhale slowly, deeply, and there it is. And there it is, just faint, barely stronger than memory. Rose ash. You smile. Left it is. As you descend into a small valley, you pass a half-crumbled stone marker. You run your fingers over it. A lion once etched here. Now it looks more like a
The sun is well above the horizon now, casting long, shimmering ribbons of heat over the gravel path. Your boots crunch rhythmically, and you narrow your eyes against the glare. Heat in the desert isn't just hot, it's personal. It gets under your tunic, behind your ears, and into places you didn't even know you had. You reach into your pouch and pull out a sliver of dried plum. It's sharp, tangy, and exactly what you need to shake off the creeping fatigue. A trick passed down from older couriers. Sour flavors keep your mind alert, your jaw moving, and your legs from turning to soup. Not glamorous, but effective, like most things in your trade. The scent markers are gone for now. You're back on one of the better maintained segments of the Royal Road, and here the track is as obvious as your own nose. Grooved by countless hooves and sandals, lined with the occasional mile marker shaped like a squat obelisk, this stretch leads toward the old caravanserai at Golbahar, a midway station infamous for two things: strong date liquor and equally strong donkeys. You pass a stone bench, half sunk in the sand, with a faded relief of Darius the Great carved into its side. He looks down at you, stern and majestic. You look back, half smiling. You've got more blisters than he ever did, guaranteed. As you keep moving, the landscape begins to shift. The sparse grass gives way to patches of scrubby olive trees, their twisted limbs stretching like sleepy dancers. The road bends around a small dried-up creek bed. You pause for a drink from your water skin, which is more wishful thinking than hydration at this point. In the distance, you spot something odd. A group of 3 figures, all cloaked and hooded, crouched over a small pile of stones. You slow your pace. Bandits? Messengers? Traveling musicians with terrible navigation skills? You get closer. They're scribes. You can tell by the way they're holding their styluses, gripping them like prayer candles, and by the flat stone writing surface one of them has balanced on his knee. They nod at you, barely looking up. Their voices are a chorus of low mutters, all about measurements and seal styles and the nerve of a governor in Sardis who switched ink suppliers without permission. You wave, and one of them absent-mindedly offers you a dried apricot. You accept. They're recording trade tallies, it seems, a long column of numbers, names, and grain weights that will eventually be sent to Persepolis, reviewed, summarized, and filed in some giant archive never to be read again. And yet, it matters, because somewhere, someone will one day need to know how many goats were exchanged for how many amphorae of oil in this exact region on this exact date. And maybe, just maybe, it'll end up carved on a tablet that a future archaeologist will dust off and mispronounce. You thank them and move on. The wind shifts again.
This time, the scent is unmistakable. Mint, dry and crushed, with an undertone of resin. It's not part of the official scent code, but you know it. It's old Courier shorthand. Mint means rest stop ahead, but resin, that's a personal touch. That means watch out. You raise an eyebrow. Historians still debate whether personal scent codes were an accepted sublayer of the relay system or just a rebellious prank passed down by bored messengers. But whatever the official policy, out here, the real system is what keeps your legs moving and your message safe. You proceed with caution. Sure enough, just past the next bend, you come across the stop. A modest little hut of clay brick and palm frond thatch tucked under a crooked date tree. A water jug sits out front, half full. But something's odd. No smoke from the chimney, no tethered horses, no station guard humming tunelessly to himself. You wait a moment, listening. Nothing. You approach the door and knock lightly. Still no answer. Inside, the place is empty, but not ransacked. A pair of sandals by the mat, a pot of lentils on the stove, cold. A scroll left open on the table. Whoever was here left in a hurry, but not in fear. More like interruption. You scan the room again. A small clay dish catches your eye. Inside, dried mint leaves. Next to it, a scrap of linen with a sticky trace of resin. You're not imagining this. Someone left you a message. A silent one. Scent-based, coded, almost poetic. You refill your water skin, leave 2 dates on the By the time you reach Gul Bahar, the last light is peeling itself off the hills like reluctant skin. Shadows stretch and slide across the road, lengthening your own, as if trying to walk a few extra paces ahead of you. The outpost gate creaks as you push it open, and immediately the smells hit you. First, the smoky tang of bread baked too close to coals. Then, animal sweat, lots of it, horses, donkeys, and one nervous camel. And finally, underneath it all, the faintest trace of sandalwood and charred bark, exactly what caught your nose on the ridge. You step inside. Gul Bahar is more bustling than you expected. Couriers aren't the only ones here. There are spice traders unloading baskets of dried sumac, a Zoroastrian priestess tending to a traveling fire altar, and a group of Macedonian mercenaries arm wrestling over a game of pebbles, which they claim has sacred military origins. It doesn't. You find the station master under a fig tree, muttering at a pigeon with a bandaged wing. She doesn't look up when you greet her, just gestures to the logbook. You're late. You smile. So is the moon. She snorts and finally turns. Her eyes flick across your uniform, your travel pack, your boots. You smell like mint and warning. You nod. Wasn't me. The previous stop left a message. Resin? Yup. She whistles low. Been hearing things. Posts ahead missing markers? One guy says he followed time-scented wool strings for 5 leagues before realizing they were from a wedding procession. You raise your eyebrows. That's not just a detour, that's a social commitment. Historians still argue whether rogue scent systems developed organically from necessity or as quiet protest against centralized control. Either way, they're part of your unofficial training. And they're getting bolder. The station master motions to a table beneath a lantern. You'll sleep here. Bread's still warm. Don't trust the lentils. You nod and set your bag down. But before you rest, you take a short walk around the courtyard. The scent of sandalwood leads you to a small alcove at the far wall. There, etched with surprising precision into a slab of limestone, is a symbol, a circle within a square. It's old Courier cipher. Roughly translated, enemy eyes nearby. Do not linger. You run your fingers across it. So it's not just decorative. It's a warning, one that wasn't made in haste. Someone took their time with this. Someone who knew it might be days before the next courier passed through and saw it. Someone with a deep respect for the silent network that hums beneath the surface of official orders and royal stamps. You return to the table, unwrap your travel scroll, and begin to write a new line of notation. Not the main message, that stays sealed, but a simple side note. Marker absent, mint and resin used at X, glyph found at Golbahar. Eyes open. You sign with your mark, a looping shape that loosely resembles a snake curled in on itself. And then you tuck it into your secondary satchel. You never know which notes will become part of the archive someday. Most won't, but someone has to keep the trail warm. You eat the bread. It's hard, chewy, and has exactly 3 sesame seeds trying to escape from the crust. Still better than last week's walnut paste incident. You settle into your cot, the stone beneath your mat surprisingly cool. And listen. There's the soft bleat of a goat that someone apparently lost and decided not to reclaim. There's the murmured laughter of a group playing some dice game involving dried beans and poorly defined rules. There's the creak of wagon wheels, even though no one's moving tonight. And faintest of all, there's the wind brushing over the roof tiles, whispering a lullaby that no one taught it, but everyone seems to know. You close your eyes. But just as your mind begins to melt into the edges of sleep, you hear something strange. A clink, like glass, then another. You sit up. No one around you stirs, which means either you're the only one who hears it, or you're the only one who thinks it's unusual. You grab your knife, because you're not completely a romantic, and step outside. The sound is coming from behind the fig tree. You move slowly, quietly, feet rolling heel to toe, as you were taught. Around a corner, in the flickering firelight cast by the station's lanterns, you see a figure. Small, cloaked, holding a bundle wrapped in thick. Section 6. Morning arrives quietly, like it's unsure if it's welcome. The Golbahar outpost stirs with a sluggish dignity. Someone yawns audibly from the roof, a goat sneezes into a pile of onion skins, and a pot begins to boil over, unwatched, until it hisses in protest. You lace up your sandals with the weary rhythm of someone who's already run today in their mind, and by the time you step outside, the station master is waiting. She hands you a small vial, sealed with wax, labeled only with a curled symbol. "Keep this on you," she says. "If you pass Amara, add it to the oil markers. If you don't pass Amara," she trails off and shrugs. "Well, then don't waste it." You ask her what's in it. She smiles. "Sweet marjoram and library ink." You blank. "That's not a real berry." "No," she agrees, "but it sounds like one, doesn't it?" Your first laugh of the day comes not from joy, but from sheer surrender to the absurd logic that governs these roads. Today's stretch is long and silent. Your path winds into a low canyon, where sunlight clings to the upper walls but never quite reaches the ground. It smells faintly of chalk dust and cave moss, and your own footsteps seem muffled, as though the canyon is politely trying not to disturb your thoughts. You pause beside a stone marker shaped like a crouching lion. Not because it's useful, it's been chipped beyond recognition, but because someone has daubed a streak of yellow paste beneath its paw. You sniff it. Saffron, but a different mix than you're used to. This one has basil oil mixed in, which normally means ignore this direction, false trail, redirect west. You adjust course. And wonder, who's laying false trails now? It used to be a trick used only during wartime or plagues, when a decoy route could protect critical messages from interception or infection. Historians still argue whether couriers had formal approval to create those deceptions, or if it was all rogue ingenuity wrapped in plausible deniability. Either way, it's genius. Because the road westward, the one you now follow, leads through a series of wind-carved ridges where sound disappears entirely. Birds fall silent here, leaves don't rustle. Even your own breathing feels disrespectfully loud. So when you hear the footsteps behind you, too light for hooves, too slow for urgency, you freeze. You wait. They stop too. You turn, slowly. No one. But the path behind you smells faintly of lavender. Not the wild kind either. The kind soaked in oil and hung in wax-sealed pouches to mask human scent. Someone's out there, close. You quicken your pace, not in fear, but in protocol. You reach the ridge of clay crows by midday. No real crows live here, just a series of eerie clay figurines stuck into crevices and niches, each one facing a different direction. No two are alike. Some wear painted turbans, some carry scrolls, others hold tiny herb bundles. You know the code. A crow with open wings, safe rest ahead. One with a broken beak, dangerous water source nearby. One with two heads, mixed messages, literally. The one you find today is clutching a sprig of wormwood in its clay claws. Wormwood means change, or interference. It's subtle, but that's the point. These figurines aren't meant for everyone, only those trained or obsessive enough to memorize the system. You press your palm against the base of the figure, count to 5, and then feel it, a notch carved beneath. Someone stored a note there. You draw it out. It's written in shorthand, Courier dialect. You read it aloud under your breath. Routes compromised, scent trails overwritten. Travel silent, trust no Standard Oil. That's not good. Because you just used Standard Oil 4 leagues ago to mark your pass near the juniper grove. You sit down on a warm rock and exhale slowly. The breeze picks up, scattering tiny clay dust swirls at your feet. There's a fine line between paranoia and preparation. You live on that line. Today, it feels razor thin. Time to revise. You open your pack and select a small vial, not from the official kit, but from the private row. This one is filled with dried pomegranate rind soaked in
7. The fire you lit has mostly burned down now, just a crescent of orange glow curled in the coals. You sit in the silence, rolling the wax-sealed message between your fingers like a worry stone. It's a courier's message, left in a place only a courier would find, but not meant for you. And still, here you are. You break the seal, just a hairline crack through old wax, and unroll the linen with care. The message is short, no signature, just 4 lines. 3 marks false. North Ridge tainted. Trust only ash. If you see the dog, follow. You read it again. Then a 3rd time. And, of course, you don't fully understand it. That's the point. A good message only makes sense when it needs to, and only to the right person. But a few phrases jump out like nettles. North Ridge tainted. You'd plan to pass that way tomorrow. Trust only ash could mean the ash oil mixture used by elite runners from the eastern stations. A rare one. You don't carry it. See the dog. A visual marker? A clay statue? Or a literal animal? That's charmingly ambiguous. Historians still argue whether courier code developed from military necessity or petty rivalry. The truth? Probably both. One scribe mislabels a mountain once, and 30 years later you've got 3 dialects of scent cipher and a formal council to decide what smell represents mild danger but passable with speed. You pack up quietly and leave before full dark. The moon tonight is a slice of old soap, barely illuminating the path. You let your hands find the trail more than your eyes.
The road slopes eastward now, into gullied terrain where eucalyptus grows wild. Its scent thick, mentholated, and almost too honest for this line of work. There's a bend in the trail you don't remember. It curves right around a boulder shaped vaguely like a crouching cat. You hesitate, then circle the boulder slowly. On the other side, a bundle. At first glance, it looks like a delivery pack. Worn leather, sealed tight, tucked just under an outcrop to keep dry. You kneel beside it. The leather's scorched, burned in a controlled way, too even to be accident, too partial to be weather. Inside, dried herbs wrapped in wax paper. Some of them you recognize: mugwort, crushed juniper, a pinch of something citrusy, probably bergamot. And nestled at the bottom, a slip of cloth dyed gray, with a symbol stitched in green thread. A dog's face, stylized, triangular. Okay then, message received. You reroute. The night trail is slower, a little crueler on the ankles, but less watched, or so you hope. Your path skirts around the northern ridge, just as the message warned, and dips into an older trade route barely used since the last rebellion cooled off. It's called the Spider's Thread, because if you don't step just right, you'll fall into holes deep enough to make you believe in bad luck again. It smells like dried fig and damp wool out here. A sign, perhaps, that someone passed through earlier and left a scent behind. You follow it, not the obvious trail, but the subtle weaving of fragrance over time. The way seasoned couriers do, the way you were trained. And after 2 hours of quiet navigation and one mild misstep into a bush that turns out to be both spiky and judgmental, you reach an old water station. It's nothing but a stone basin and a dry fountain, but someone's recently cleaned it. The leaves are swept aside, the basin's been lined with fabric to trap dew. And carved into the wall, just above eye level, is a new mark. A paw print. Faint, charcoal rubbed into chipped rock. Dog again. Whatever this network is, whoever's building it, they're fast, methodical, and quiet. You respect that. And you're also just a little bit annoyed, because if you weren't already halfway committed to this new path, you'd report the whole thing and take a desk job in Shiraz tomorrow. But you've always had a soft spot for well-executed secrets. You sleep in the shallow cave behind the basin. Just a nap, just enough to reset your muscles. You dream of ink-stained fingers and burning wax, of saffron trails winding into clouds, of a dog walking backward through a marketplace, nose to the wind. When you wake, the sky's bleeding blue into gray. And someone's left food. Not a lot, just 2 figs wrapped in mulberry leaves and a... Section 8. You sit for a long time in the shade of post 19. The room smells like ink, old paper, and whatever that black oil is. Probably myrrh or something close, though with a little spice you can't quite place. It clings to your nostrils like a thought you don't want to have. Outside, the wind has picked up just enough to tug a few dry leaves across the floor in scratchy, unpredictable arcs. You imagine them as miniature scouts sent to report back to whatever invisible committee is definitely judging you from afar. This post isn't on any of your official maps, and that bothers you more than it should. According to courier records, and yes, those exist, albeit inconsistently, there were at least 37 formal way stations along the Royal Road system. Each was manned by stable hands, water bearers, scribes, and at least one quiet specialist, whose job, delightfully, remains undefined in all recovered documents. But this place, Post 19, never shows up. Maybe it's one of the unofficial posts, the kind built by regional commanders with a little extra budget and a lot of imagination. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something older, a leftover from the days before Darius formalized the routes, before anything had numbers. You rise and walk around the perimeter of the room. Every wall bears shallow carvings, faint with age. Some are simple messages, route glyphs, name marks, probably a few well-placed curses. Others are more artistic. One corner features a mural of a figure mid-run, a message rod clutched in their fist, and behind them a streak of what might be fire, or maybe just speed. You run your hand across the etching. The stone's cool and dusty. A lizard dashes behind a jar. "Trust the trail, lose it first," you mutter, trying to make it sound less ominous. Historians still argue whether the Persian courier system was primarily about speed or security. The official claim was always velocity. Herodotus famously wrote that neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers. Sounds familiar? That's because the U.S. Postal Service borrowed it later, without asking. But speed was only half the point. Security mattered just as much. After all, what good is a fast message if the wrong person reads it? Which brings us back to scents. You unstopper the little black bottle on the table and take a cautious whiff. It's sharp, pungent but not unpleasant, astringent with something earthy at the base. Clove, maybe? Or a root of some kind. You dab a bit on your sleeve, then lean back and inhale through your nose. The smell reminds you of cold mornings in the high hills, waiting for your first real assignment. Of kneeling by your instructor as he packed little sachets of herbs into his belt, explaining the scent lattice and how it functioned like a primitive cipher. Each runner, he'd said, carries a blend. The blend is your trail. Only those who know how to read it can follow without confusion. You asked, of course, what happened if two couriers used the same scent? He laughed. Then someone dies of embarrassment. And that was that. You take a step outside Post 19 and test the air. It's quiet here. No other trails, no foreign scents. Just you and the dry hum of mountain silence. Well, you and the dog. Yes, there it is again. About 30 paces downhill, half hidden behind a thorn bush, stands a low stone carving, a dog. Same as the embroidered cloth from earlier. This one's got a chipped ear and a slightly wonky snout, but it's unmistakable. You approach slowly. At the base of the statue, someone's left a cluster of dried flowers, lavender mostly, and a few white blossoms you can't name. Next to them, another wax-sealed scroll. This one's addressed plainly. To the one who rerouted. You exhale through your nose. So, it's official now. You've been seen. You crack the seal and read. No maps beyond this point. Only scent. Trail set in intervals. Trust the blends. 3 shelters remain. At the 4th, your question will be answered. You fold the message and sit beside the dog statue. It's warm from the sun. You lean against it. And for a moment, you're not a courier at all. You're just a tired traveler, halfway up a mountain, being... Section 9. By dawn, you're back on your feet, stomach filled with the remaining dates, boots laced with just enough determination to outweigh the lingering stiffness in your calves. The vetiver trail is stronger now. That earthy, sweet scent seems to wake before the sun does, clinging to stones, brush, even the mist that coils in sleepy spirals across the mountain slope. You walk slower today. Not out of fatigue, though the incline has certainly done your legs no favors, but because it feels like you're inside something ancient, like a whispering cathedral of rock and air, curated by people who understood that messages weren't always meant to be read with your eyes. Somewhere between the twisted pines and sun-bleached ledges, the thought settles over you. This trail wasn't designed for everyone, only for the ones who could read with their noses. And you? Well, you're getting better at it. Historians still argue whether these scent corridors were reserved for high-level intelligence, coded pathways used exclusively by elite imperial couriers, or if they were just the ancient equivalent of, say, air fresheners, helpful but hardly secret. Some inscriptions suggest layered blends were used to differentiate routes. Others hint that decoy trails were deployed to confuse interceptors, especially during tense border disputes. You're not sure which theory holds water. All you know is that the next marker is a goat skull dangling from a cedar branch, its eye sockets plugged with sage bundles, its snout painted with concentric red rings. Underneath hangs a strip of woven reed matting bearing the unmistakable sign, a stylized eye and a droplet. Look, then follow. You can't decide if that's wise or deeply ominous. You follow anyway. The path narrows as it enters a cleft in the mountain, flanked by jagged cliffs and carpeted with moss. Somewhere nearby, a brook murmurs to itself in the universal language of trickling water and small fish gossip. And then, like a trick of the light, the second shelter appears. Not a cave this time, but a carved platform wedged into the rock face. Someone's been maintaining it. There's a windbreak made of stitched hides, and, sitting right in the middle, a shallow bowl filled with tiny cones of incense. You crouch, take one between your fingers. It crumbles gently. Smells like dried fig, ginger, and ash. Before you can light it, you notice the writing carved into the base of the bowl. This blend only burns in stillness. You smirk. Fine. You sit cross-legged on the platform. Let the mountain do its whispering. And you wait. Eventually, the wind dies. The incense lights on the first try. The smoke curls upward, slow and pale blue, and with it rises another scent, smokier now, almost leathery. It wraps around your face like a question you didn't know how to ask. And just like that, the next message is visible. It had been there all along, of course, but without the incense to shift your perception, you'd have missed it entirely. A thin line of oil, only visible when the smoke hits it just right, snakes from the far edge of the platform toward a crack in the wall. A secret door? Nope, just a tunnel. You duck inside. It's narrow, barely shoulder width, and smells like damp stone and wild thyme. Your footsteps echo behind you like a second set, just a few beats off. You try not to think about that. About 20 steps in, the wall widens enough to reveal something truly unexpected. A mosaic. And not a royal one. This is folk art, made of clay chips and broken ceramics. A stylized map, if you had to guess. At its center, a figure running, trailed by a swirl of lines. Not unlike the mural from Post 19, but here the figure is barefoot, and the lines twist like wind. You trace your fingers along one spiral. The scent of cloves lingers on the stone. So they used visual scent maps too. Or maybe this was a training tunnel, a place to teach initiates how to recognize trail designs not just by scent, but by the memory of scent. It's surprisingly poetic, like synesthesia in stone. You press on. By midday, the trail crests into a meadow, a high, flat ridge where the world feels paused between clouds and grass. It's covered in short yellow flowers and dotted with what can only be described as cairn sculptures. Stacks of stones, each balanced impossibly on the next, forming arches, spirals, and teetering obelisks. Section 10. The sky above the meadow stretches like silk pulled taut, blue, soft-edged, and unbothered by time. You lie there longer than you intended, lulled by the warmth on your skin and the gentle tang of pine sap drifting in on the breeze. It's the sort of moment where nothing needs fixing, where the past and present flatten into one sleepy breath. Still, your feet itch, not from fatigue, but from that particular kind of curiosity that only strikes after you've napped under a cairn inscribed with cryptic advice. The last shelter is not a place. Sure, cool, that clears it up. Back on your feet, you scan the ridge, searching for the next thread in the trail. Nothing visible. No carvings, no vetiver stains, no goat skulls dangling suggestively. Just yellow flowers, sunlight, and the slow, sweeping hush of highland wind. So, you sniff. Like an overly enthusiastic bloodhound with a history degree, you start walking slow circles through the clearing, nose tilted skyward. It takes longer than you'd like to admit, but eventually, there it is. The faintest note of citrus and cedar, riding the breeze from the far end of the ridge, where a weathered juniper bush clings stubbornly to a lichen-covered boulder. You move toward it, and sure enough, tucked beneath one of the branches is a leather token. Small, circular, embossed with an emblem you've now seen at least 5 times. A runner surrounded by spirals. A tug at the corner of your memory. This symbol might have originated from royal court documents, where it served to identify urgent communiques. Only the fastest runners could carry them. The spirals denoted difficulty. 1 spiral for city routes, 2 for province crossings, and 3 for border passages through enemy land. This one? 4 spirals. Not ominous at all. You pocket the token. The trail resumes just past the bush, heading downward now, through a dense forest of cedars, each tree wrapped with strips of wool soaked in something pungent. Myrrh? Maybe a bit of smoked resin. The combination makes your eyes water in the best way. You press forward. This section of the journey has a different tempo. No more rest shelters, no philosophical mosaics. Just you, the scent, and a path that seems to tighten with every mile. At one point, you catch sight of a small footprint in the mud. Bare, but deliberate. Could be weeks old, could be this morning. Historians still argue whether the Persian courier system was entirely male-dominated, or if, as some fragments suggest, certain women were entrusted with specific routes, especially those involving coded information or long-term observation. One letter, found preserved in a satchel beneath a collapsed outpost, addresses the recipient as Daughter of the Wind. Romantic? Yes. Fabricated? Possibly. But the footprint doesn't care what scholars believe. It just keeps pointing forward. You pass an abandoned guard post carved into the rock. Inside, a pair of sandals, still upright, like someone just stepped out of them. Beside them, a half-burned candle and a lump of hardened sap wrapped in linen and tied with twine. You don't touch anything. You've played enough video games to know that's how curses happen. Instead, you sit for a moment, letting the candle's waxy musk and the sap's molasses-like sweetness nudge your senses into calm. Outside, a hawk circles. You move on. Mid-afternoon now, and the forest thins. The air feels heavier, pressed close to the earth, like it's reluctant to rise. The scent trail grows fainter again, not due to distance, but change. It's more complex now, layered. You pick up traces of mint, muskroot, and something smoky, like charred sandalwood. You stop, breathe, sort it. It's a message, or a code. And suddenly, you understand. This isn't one trail anymore. It's 3 overlapping ones. You're at a junction. You remember the token. 4 spirals. 4 directions? No. 3 scents. The 4th spiral must mean that the final route can't be chosen. It has to be felt. Your eyes scan the horizon. To the left, a high ridge, barren and sun-scorched. Center, a winding valley filled with pale grasses and old windmills, their blades long frozen. To the right, You sit there on the rim of the dry riverbed, legs dangling over nothing, dust curling in lazy spirals below. There's no marker, no cairn, no smudge of oil-soaked wool or whisper of vetiver. Just the wind and a peculiar silence that seems deliberate, like the landscape itself has chosen this as the end of the route and doesn't want to explain why. You lie back. The sun has begun its slow descent, angling shadows across your face like the closing of stage curtains. For the first time in hours, maybe days, your body lets go. Not just a little, not the kind of release that comes from sitting down with a sigh or stretching out stiff calves. This is the deeper kind, a kind Couriers probably knew too well. That final breath after a message has been delivered, when it's no longer your job to hold it. They called it the sapan, or the fading, in some dialects of Old Persian, a moment not of collapse, but of exhale. A cultural concept not unlike the Japanese ma, space that carries meaning in its stillness. Messengers were trained to honor this pause, to recognize that the journey doesn't end with the destination, but with the settling. So, you settle. Of course, your modern instincts kick in eventually. You dig into your pouch, rummaging past the stale pistachios and that extremely judgmental goatskin map you found 2 cairns ago. You pull out your notes. Except, there are none. You flip through blank parchment, fingers trembling with the beginning of understanding. All those smells, the carvings, the waxed scrolls, they weren't meant to be transcribed. They were meant to be experienced. You weren't a chronicler. You were the relay. Historians still argue whether Persian couriers operated solely as information carriers, or if they were, in part, walking mnemonic devices, entrusted with stories, rituals, and knowledge not written down, but woven into memory by way of repetition and sensory immersion. The latter seems dramatic, until you're lying in the desert, belly full of lavender air, and brain humming with 100-layered sense, and suddenly, it makes perfect sense. You begin to recite, softly, to yourself, the sequence of smells: vetiver, myrrh, rose, cedar, goat hair, resin, mint, muskroot, sandalwood, rue. Your tongue knows the pattern before your brain does. You realize you've memorized not just a map, but a story. It's faint, but it's there. The tale of a lost prince, an emerald ring, a betrayal at the water's edge. You didn't read it. You walked it. Each turn in the path was a plot point. Each scent, a chapter. The system wasn't just logistics. It was literature. No wonder scholars couldn't find the last scroll. It was your legs all along. A nearby pebble shifts. You glance over, half expecting another courier to rise out of the sand like some ancient mailman vampire. Instead, a small lizard, striped in the exact ochre hues of the soil, sunbathing like it owns the place. It blinks slowly, disapprovingly, then it turns and scrambles away. You take the hint. Your legs are sore, but usable. You hoist yourself up and look around. Off to the right, near a dried-up cluster of reeds, is a line of flat stones, too neat to be natural. You follow them. They lead to a hollow, just big enough to crouch inside. There's a stack of thin clay tablets wrapped in linen, brittle but dry. Each bears a spiral, the same one from your earlier token, but there's no text, only grooves etched into the surface. You run your fingers across one. It smells faintly of coriander. And there it is again, the story. In smell, in touch, in shape. Historians would call this fringe theory, unverifiable, unsupported by major archives. But your nose disagrees. Your hands disagree. Your spine, aching from hours of pacing over hills and valleys, definitely disagrees. So you wrap one of the tablets in your... Section 12. You walk slowly now. The urgency is gone, lifted like a stone from your back. There's no scroll tucked into your belt demanding delivery, no sandstorm biting at your heels, no steward waiting at the next outpost with an impatient face and a heavy signet ring. Just the path. And the path is quiet. It's the kind of quiet that nudges you into thoughts you don't usually let wander too far. About who built all this. Not just the roads and cairns, but the system itself. The logic behind it. The trust in scent as memory, in wind as witness. It's not something you think up in a boardroom. You pass what looks like the rib cage of an old shelter, the timbers bleached white from years of sun. Scattered around are fragments of pottery, most undecorated, pure function. Water vessels, maybe, or herbal paste jars. A few bear faint imprints, indigo swirls, and a symbol you've seen before. 2 dots and a line, thought by some scholars to represent the breath between scents, the pause between dispatches. It's poetic, really, but also possibly made up. Historians still argue whether that symbol was part of a courier's official code or simply a decorative flourish from a regional artisan. You're beginning to suspect it doesn't matter. After all, when a system relies on the nose, it stops needing words. You pick up one of the shards and bring it close. The faintest trace of juniper clings to it, a ghost of its former content. That's the thing with the old courier systems. They didn't traffic in permanence. The scrolls disintegrated, the oil burned off. The stories were carried in bone and blood and breath, in humans. Which brings you to the strange part. You haven't seen another soul in hours, maybe days. Not that the couriers were ever known for their sociability. They trained in isolation, kept apart even at way stations. There are records from Persepolis administrative archives, dull, uniform scribbles, that suggest couriers were deliberately rotated between regions every 6 moons. Why? Scholars can't agree. Some say it was to prevent personal attachment. Others argue it was more practical. Avoid betrayal, prevent message leakage, discourage route memorization. But that last part seems ironic now, doesn't it? You pause beside a low rise, and at your feet is a single leather strap, cracked and half buried. You tug gently. It's old, certainly, but not ancient. It might belong to a modern hiker, or maybe a long-retired courier who slipped into legend, leaving behind only this strap and a whiff of cardamom. As you continue on, the terrain starts to shift beneath your sandals. Less sand, more crushed gravel, the kind that clings to the soles and whispers with each step. You crest a gentle slope, and there it is. A stone structure, partly collapsed, partly swallowed by desert scrub. An old relay station. You duck beneath the surviving arch. The interior is cooler, the light dappled through the broken roof. A single bronze hook still juts from the wall, likely where scrolls or pouches once hung. There's a ledge carved into the back, a kind of sleeping platform. You run your fingers over its surface. It's stained in places, faint traces of wax, likely from a portable oil lamp. A groove down the center suggests regular usage, maybe as a gillow spot. But then something more curious catches your eye. Etched into the stone, small and careful, is a series of notches, clusters of 7, then a gap, then 6, then 5. You count them out loud. You're not sure why. Maybe it was a tally, a calendar, Or maybe just someone trying to remember how long they'd been alone. You lie down for a moment, just to feel the weight of the stone. It's hard, of course, and your back protests, but your head sinks into the groove like it was made for you. You close your eyes, and suddenly you hear it. A faint whinny. Not from a horse, from a human voice, a courier, imitating the sound, just as they were trained to do. It's not a common detail, but some obscure training texts mention it. When scent trails faded or were interrupted by storms, couriers would use mimicry, whistles, hoofbeats, animal calls to signal across valleys. A kind of ancient Morse code, disguised as nature. You sit up quickly. The sound's already gone. Did you dream it? You step back out into the light, but nothing moves.
You stand there for a while, the wax tablet still warm from the sun in your hand, though you'd swear it radiates something older. It's small enough to slip into your satchel, but you don't. Instead, you carry it openly, like a torch or a promise. The path out of the grove isn't marked, but the earth seems slightly more worn in one direction, just enough for instinct to kick in. Your sandals crunch over dry roots and wind-scattered seed pods. Somewhere nearby, a bird lets out a call that almost sounds like laughter. You glance up, half expecting to see someone hiding behind a branch, watching. But the trees just sigh in the wind. You've entered what might have once been a transition zone, a place between provinces. Persian couriers knew how to cross more than just land. They crossed language, culture, and expectation. That's what the wax tablets were for. Not every message was for every reader. See, unlike scrolls or papyrus, wax tablets could be wiped clean and rewritten. Layers upon layers of faded communications, training updates, personal notes, even recipes, all lost under the newest pressing. Like dream journals you forget to keep. Some archaeologists claim to have recovered hints of scent recipes from such tablets. Clove-rhubarb blends, for example, used to signal northern routes, or bitter orange paired with goat hair to mark a dead end. Others dismiss these as modern fantasy. There's no hard proof, after all. Still, when you hold this wax tablet, your fingers come away faintly sticky, and your nose twitches with the ghost of lemon balm and old ink. So maybe it's not fantasy at all. The trail takes you along a ridge now. To your left, a stretch of salt-crusted flats glimmers, like the sea tried to come this far inland and then gave up. To your right, low hills pockmarked with cave mouths. Some of them may have once stored supplies, others, perhaps, hidden messages. Or sleeping couriers. You reach a narrow pass where the rock walls close in. It's cool here, shadowed. The air carries a curious stillness, like the world is holding its breath. And there, carved faintly into the rock, more markings. This time, a series of loops and lines you've seen only once before, in a poorly preserved codex in a back corner of a university museum. Courier route glyphs, the caption read, with typical confidence. But the guide confessed under her breath that no two scholars agreed on what they meant. Some thought they were directional codes, others blessings to protect the rider. Still others saw them as mere doodles made by bored messengers waiting for a shift change. In the dim light, though, you notice something that didn't show up in that museum replica. Scratch marks beside the glyphs. Not vandalism, not animal, intentional, like someone added footnotes. Your hand brushes against a set of 4 small indentations, all in a row. They look like fingernail impressions. Fresh? No, but not ancient either. You keep moving. The pass opens up to a plateau, and here you spot it. A flat slab, just high enough to serve as a desk or altar. On it, half hidden beneath a scatter of pebbles, is something unexpected.
A spoon. Simple bronze, burnished by time. It shouldn't mean anything. But in courier tradition, at least according to one oddly poetic scholar, a spoon left on a stone meant the meal is safe. It was a quiet signal. A relay station had not been compromised. You could rest, refill your satchel, re-wax your tablet. It's silly, really. But you smile. And you sit. The breeze kicks up gently. You unwrap the wax tablet. Inside, the inscription is faint but legible. Persian cuneiform, stylized and flowing. You've seen enough examples now to puzzle out the rhythm, if not every word. It doesn't give instructions. It simply reads, "The road has memory. Walk gently, and it will recall you." Below that, in a different hand, scratched into the wax with less care, is something stranger. If you see the scent again, follow it backward. You pause. That's not a phrase from the official courier code. If anything, it sounds like advice, or a riddle. You sniff the tablet. Lemon balm, yes, but also something else. Fainter? Maybe frankincense, or something resinous. Your memory
Section 14. Backtracking wasn't part of the original plan. Couriers were trained to press forward, to move with unshakable momentum. Retreat was inefficient, and inefficiency was the enemy. But this isn't retreat. It's something stranger. You're no longer carrying the message. You are the message, unraveling like a scroll caught in the wind. The resin thread, delicate as breath, leads you west by a slightly different path. No markers this time. No carved glyphs or cheerful stone spoons. Just faint glints of hardened scent trail, clinging like spider webs to branches and reeds. Every few paces, you pause and inhale, your nose now your compass. The scent profile shifts subtly. First cedar, then vetiver, then a smokier note like charred almond. Each change means something, or at least it did to the couriers who once laid these paths. Scholars speculate this layering system created a sort of olfactory Morse code. Others say it was just a poetic exaggeration by early European travelers trying to impress readers back home. But when the smell sharpens without warning, cutting through the warm air like a snapped string, your head jerks up involuntarily. Smoke. Real, recent smoke. You crouch instinctively, feeling the animal twitch of your muscles recalling something ancestral. But there's no danger scent. No meat cooking, no panic. Just the low, resinous curl of something like incense. You follow it. It leads you into a depression in the land, a bowl of dry grass ringed by tall, silent reeds. And there, sitting as if placed just for your arrival, is a brazier. Cold now, but its embers still whisper heat if you hover close. Next to it, a sack. You hesitate. There's no name, no sigil, nothing to claim it. But you've come this far. Carefully, you unroll the top. Inside, a bundle of wax-coated sticks, each marked with the narrow scoring used by royal scribes, and a roll of fabric that smells like rose water and dust. You unroll the cloth. It's a map, but not one you've seen before. It doesn't show borders or rivers. It shows scent profiles. Faint lines traced with perfume-based inks, each curve representing a blend. Myrrh with sage, anise with mint, cinnamon with sea salt. The lines crisscross like an abstract spiderweb, creating intersections where courier routes likely converged. There are no place names, only time notations, hours, days. The fastest way to travel across memory, not geography. And scrawled in the bottom right corner, in Persian, "If the road forgets you, burn this." You let out a breath. Just a little too hard, too dry.
The air here is full of ghosts and unasked questions. The brazier, the map, the faint warmth left behind. Someone was here recently. A fellow traveler? A courier echo? Or something else? Someone who wanted you to find this. You take the wax sticks and tuck them carefully into your satchel. The map you roll tightly and slide into the protective core of your scroll case. You don't light anything, not yet. Instead, you sit. There's a kind of reverence needed now, like you've stumbled into a temple without knowing the rites. The wind doesn't much down here, but a grasshopper clicks once, then stills. You notice your own breathing, how quiet it's become, how shallow. Because you realize this wasn't a relay stop. This was a reset point. Some stations in the old system weren't just for changing mounts or picking up new tablets. Some were for reorienting the courier altogether, wiping mental slates, letting the body forget its own fatigue, if only briefly. You lie back in the dry grass, and for the first time, you feel the memory of the earth, not just the scent trail. Persian couriers, particularly during the reign of Darius, were trained in a method not unlike what today we'd call sensory meditation. Not officially, of course. No records survive detailing it outright. But odd notations in some scrolls mention facing the path with clear breath, or settling one's noise before the horse's hooves lift. You slow your breath. You let the world narrow to the space of your ribs.
Section 15. The path curves again, not by road, but by rhythm. Your feet are no longer obeying what your eyes see. They move in time with a kind of internal metronome. Tap, step, pause. Inhale, follow. You're no longer checking for scent trails consciously. They're part of your breath now, a new language carved into your sinuses. It's almost ridiculous how quickly the body adapts. But the Persians knew this, knew that the best courier wasn't the fastest rider or the strongest runner. It was the one who let the system become their instinct. Your destination? Unclear. But your direction? Constant. The land rises slightly, and scrubland gives way to craggy slopes peppered with wild thyme and tiny purple flowers that don't seem to mind the heat. They perfume the path, confusing your trail-sniffing reflexes. You slow. Then you see it. A cairn. Simple, stacked stones, not tall, not ornate. But at the top, resting like a message folded in gesture rather than paper, is a dried fig, perfectly preserved, untouched by birds or ants, a marker, a sign that someone or something is still using this road. You eat the fig, carefully, reverently. It's chewy and sweet, like dusted honey with a hint of citrus. Likely left by another courier, possibly a ritual. Leave food behind, take energy forward. Either that, or someone up ahead is on a very thoughtful picnic. And then the trail shifts again, not physically, but tonally. You start noticing that every few hundred steps, the flora changes subtly, not just due to altitude, but in a curated kind of way. Sage becomes mint, then lavender, then tarragon. Each cluster roughly follows a bend in the trail. It dawns on you. You're in a scent corridor. Historians argue whether Persian couriers received training in botany specifically to read such living trails, or if these corridors were simply planted for royal comfort in occasional ceremonial rides. Either way, here you are, on a botanical roller coaster designed to trigger memory through your nose. The next turn delivers a view that would steal your breath if it weren't already caught in olfactory meditation. Below, in the narrow cradle of a valley, lies an ancient rest station. Crumbling walls, roof long gone, but still unmistakable in its rectangular symmetry. You descend toward it, eyes scanning for movement, but it's silent, deserted.
Even the wind seems to mute itself as you approach. Inside, a stone bench, a basin carved into the earth, and something etched on the far wall. You crouch to read it. It's poetry, in Old Persian, probably added generations after the station fell out of official use. It reads, "He who carries the word must forget the weight. He who drinks here remembers the wind." And in the basin, not water, but small stones, smooth and warm from the day's heat. You take one. Why not? The night begins to press against the sky now. The blue deepens. Shadows stretch and lose their edges. You light a small taper from your kit. Not fire, just a glow. Enough to see by, but not enough to attract attention. Because now, the real test begins. The night route. Persian couriers, especially those traveling through desert regions, often rode in the dark. It conserved water, avoided heat stroke, and kept messages safer from prying eyes. Some say they trained under star charts. Others say they followed scent trails, designed to bloom strongest at dusk. Compounds that awakened only under the pressure of dropping temperature. And yes, there are modern recreations. Historians have tried to replicate these trails with contemporary chemistry. Most failed. One team in Tehran got close, using a base of frankincense, animal fat, and crushed rose petals. But even they admitted it was more art than science. Still, something in the dark calls to you. You follow. The path is hard to see, but not hard to sense. Occasionally, the foot brushes against a reed bundle, or you pass a tree trunk that smells faintly of clove. The scent was once stronger, years ago, decades maybe, but it's held. Ghosts of intention still linger in the fibers of bark. Then you spot it. A shimmer. Not fire, not light. A smell that feels like light. You pause. This one is new. Orange blossom and wet stone. Section 16. Your boots crunch on something unfamiliar. Coarse gravel, sharper than desert sand, not quite stone. You glance down. Salt crystals. Pale, jagged, and gleaming faintly in the moonlight like brittle teeth scattered across the earth. That explains the metallic smell from earlier. You're approaching one of the ancient Persian salt flats. The Royal Road, for all its splendor, was not just about connecting cities. It threaded together nature's strangest gifts. Valleys that sang, rocks that glowed, and yes, landscapes that tasted like the inside of a brine jar. Salt flats were more than scenery. They served strategic functions. Deterred horse thieves, nothing gallops well on crusty salt, created predictable weather corridors, and acted as natural preservatives. Many historians still argue whether the salt paths were deliberately designed as postal waypoints or just geological accidents repurposed by clever planners. Either way, you're in one now. Your breath catches slightly. The air's thinner here, drier too. You lick your lips. Mistake. They burn a little from the salt in the breeze. You pull your scarf up. It helps. A bit. In the distance, too far to measure, you see something shimmering. A trick of the light? Possibly. Or heat residue. Or maybe, if you're thinking like a Persian courier, it's a station built on an old caravanserai. Salt meant caravans. Caravans meant news. News meant the king's attention. That shimmer could be your next rest stop. Or just a mirage designed by centuries of traveler legends. You walk anyway. Along the way, you begin noticing patterns in the salt. Lines. Not natural striations, but deliberate markings. Old lines, maybe thousands of footsteps long. Some curves, some straight, etched in loops and arcs. Too shallow to be canals, but too organized to be natural. You realize what they are. Scent codices. In arid zones where smells disperse quickly, Persian runners carved shallow grooves and filled them with mixtures, animal oils, powdered herbs, fermented citrus, then sealed them with hot stones to preserve the aroma. At night, as temperatures dropped and air thickened, the trails breathed upward. A scent map for the trained nose, invisible text written across the land. You crouch and inhale. Faint notes of dill and honeyed resin, a direction. You follow. There's a story some scholars love to tell, a bit of lore from the old texts. One particular courier, unnamed, was said to be so attuned to scent maps that he could run blindfolded for 100 leagues, guided only by aroma. According to legend, the king once challenged him by rearranging the route overnight. The courier still arrived early. When asked how, he reportedly shrugged and said, "The trail still remembered me." You hope the trail remembers you, too. The salt gives way gradually to packed clay, and at last, stone. Your boots ring against it, a change in acoustics that brings a small thrill. Civilization, perhaps, or it's fossil. You come upon a low wall, crumbled but still upright in parts. Carved into it a sequence of glyphs. Not Persian, Elamite maybe, much older. You pause. This wasn't part of the royal network. This predates it. And yet the road still led you here. Inside the ruin, little more than 4 knee-high walls, is a sunken pit with charred remains of something that once burned slow and fragrant. You can still smell the ghosts of it. Myrrh, possibly, or the sweeter note of galbanum. Burnt offering or postal incense. Historians still argue whether waypoints like this served spiritual functions or were simply optimized for rest. Some say every third station included a sacred fire. Others claim the fires were practical, used to dry couriers' feet, sterilize bandages, or boil medicinal tea. Whatever the truth, the smell lingers. You sit for a moment. The wind's picked up, but only slightly. Just enough to make your satchel straps flutter. You feel the weight of the letter again. Not heavy, but constant, like it wants to be delivered. You move on. As you climb the next ridge, the stars burst fully overhead. 17. Your feet thud softly now, muffled by the return of packed earth and a fine layer of desert sand. The night has reached that strange, suspended hour. Too late for owls, too early for roosters. Everything holds its breath, and even your own breathing feels borrowed from the landscape. You're no longer thinking about time. Not really. You're thinking about roots. Lines crisscrossing the empire like veins, each one pulsing with the hopes, orders, and secrets of kings and merchants alike. Somewhere, back in the capital, a royal scribe sharpens a reed pen, unaware that their ink has triggered this very journey. You come to a fork. Not metaphorically, a literal fork in the path. 2 diverging roads, nearly identical. No signs, no markers, just the hush of wind shifting sand between them. You kneel and sniff. One trail smells faintly of citrus peel and pine resin. The other, earthy, musty, with the dry bitterness of acacia bark. To the untrained nose, it's meaningless. To a courier, it's a decision tree. According to the handbook, yes, they had those, sometimes inscribed on ceramic tablets, pine and citrus marked high-priority messages destined for military outposts. Acacia meant merchant routes, longer delays, less urgency. You tilt your head and choose the citrus path. As you walk, you think about the sheer logistics involved in all this. The empire didn't just have scent trails and runners. They had a hierarchy of speed. There were horse relays, camel routes, foot couriers, even pigeons for short distances, though birds were mostly for emergencies or high winds. And among the foot couriers, a class above the rest, the scent hounds. Not dogs, humans. Specialists trained from childhood to recognize over 100 distinct scent patterns used by the Persian postal network. The irony? Most of them were said to have poor eyesight. Focus, they claimed. Better to smell the road than stare at it. One of the most famous was a woman from the eastern provinces, near modern-day Uzbekistan. Known only by her nickname, Dust Nose, she once completed a message run of 270 kilometers in 3 days, relying entirely on a stitched sash soaked in encoded oils. According to later records, she never got lost. When asked her secret, she reportedly answered, "I trust the wind more than men." You wonder what she would make of your pace now. Probably unimpressed. Up ahead, the terrain shifts again. A cluster of low stones marks a rest station. Barely more than an outline, but you can tell it was once a square courtyard. In the center, a circle of darker soil suggests an old fire pit. You approach, expecting silence. Instead, you hear humming. Not melodic, not human. A low, resonant hum, like bees buzzing inside an amphora. You peer into the pit. Nothing. Then you realize it's the stones themselves. Singing stones. A rare geological quirk found in only a few parts of the empire, particularly near volcanic deposits. When wind hits them at the right angle, the cavities inside the porous rock vibrate. Some Persians believed these stones guided couriers when stars were hidden. Historians still argue whether the singing stones were intentionally placed along courier routes or if runners simply learned to interpret them as natural beacons. Either way, you're listening now. The hum is soft, warm, almost a purr. It calms your breathing. You sit for a moment and press your hand to one of the stones. It's warm. You stay there, letting the vibration move through your palm, your wrist, your chest. It's oddly comforting, like the purring of a giant desert cat curled beneath the earth. Eventually, the hum fades, and with it, your own tension. You rise and continue walking. The land opens up again. Ahead, a structure appears. Not a ruin, an actual building, low and flat-roofed, with light flickering behind slatted windows. You approach cautiously. No one opens the door. You knock once. It creaks open just slightly, and the scent hits you. Frankincense and roasted barley. That can only mean one thing. You've reached a rest house for imperial couriers. Known in Old Persian as chaparhane, these way stations were the backbone of the whole system.
Section 18. Dawn creeps up like a bashful servant, staining the horizon with shy streaks of rose and ochre. You step out into the chilled hush of early morning, the kind of silence that wraps around you like a woolen cloak. The rest house door thuds softly behind you, and just like that, you're alone again, with only the wind and the scent trail to guide you. Your legs complain. Your feet have adopted a rhythm of their own, one part muscle memory, one part sheer stubbornness. And as you shuffle back onto the path, you catch the faintest whiff of the route's next phase. Myrrh, a trace of juniper, and is that goat butter? It is. And you groan, because that combination can mean only one thing: mountain pass ahead. Not the kind with quaint snowcaps and postcard views. These are the Zagros Mountains, rugged, craggy, and breathtaking in the way a bear's open maw might be. You adjust your tunic and begin the ascent. The switchbacks are narrow. One misstep, and it's a very long tumble into obscurity, both literal and historical. Couriers here had a saying, "Slower than a goat is safer than a ghost." Catchy, no?
You hug the edge of a path worn by centuries of feet, hooves, and wheels. Even thou, in your quiet little journey through reconstructed memory, you notice how intentional every dip and incline feels. This was no accident. These roads were engineered with shocking precision, graded for drainage, widened for ox carts, and maintained by rotating teams of imperial workers. Historians still argue whether Darius the Great himself ordered these routes or if they evolved organically from older tribal trails. Either way, the result is the same. A road network so effective, Alexander the Great barely had to build anything new. He just walked in and used what was already there. Borrowed logistics. Classic conqueror move. You pause to catch your breath at a ledge where a tree has carved out a shady rest. It's a pistachio tree, gnarled and knotted, the kind of plant that looks older than the empire itself. You pluck a few nuts, crack them open with your teeth. Dry, but edible. As you chew, your eyes wander over a series of stacked stones, an ancient marker. Someone, long ago, passed here and left a message. 5 stones in a vertical column. All safe, supplies nearby. You nod, silently thanking whoever left the sign. These impromptu communication systems were part of a larger, informal code shared among Persian couriers. In remote regions, official instructions faded. What remained was trust and tradition. A line of blackened rocks, warning of a recent fire. Scratches on a tree in groups of 3, bandits nearby. No GPS, no radios, just smells, stones, and shared rituals. The sun peeks over the ridge, and for a moment, the entire valley below flares with gold. You stop and take it in. Even your inner monologue quiets for a beat. You descend now. And with the descent comes a shift in scent. The butter smell fades, replaced by something sharper, vinegar and crushed mint. This part of the trail leads toward a rural trade hub, a town built around a river, once famous for its pickled herbs and vinegary stews. Not the sort of fame empires are built on, perhaps, but try telling that to your grumbling stomach. You're not the only one on the road anymore. Ahead, a group of traveling musicians overtakes you. 3 men, 1 woman, all carrying lutes and drums strapped to their backs like lazy turtles. They nod as they pass, offering half smiles but no words. Their scent is faintly floral, rosewater probably, sprayed onto their scarves to mask the smell of sweat and goat. It's a popular trick. You used to carry a clove-soaked cloth for long trips. Rubbed it under your nose whenever a camel caravan passed too close. Worked like a charm. Unless it rained. Then you just smelled like soggy spice bread. You chuckle softly at the memory, then remind yourself you're here to carry the king's words, not reminisce about clove towels. You pass through a narrow gorge where the air...
Section 19. You linger in the post house a moment longer than necessary. The clay walls exhale warmth, the scent of oiled parchment and ash wafting gently through the dim air. Your legs have no desire to return to movement, not yet. Your mission is complete, for now, and your body, with impeccable timing, begins to notice every ache, itch, and tiny blister it politely ignored during the last 20 leagues. You lower yourself onto a cushion with the grace of a collapsing tent. Around you, the quiet hum of a dozen similar lives continues. A courier naps on his satchel in the corner, mouth slightly open, face pressed into the padded flap like it's the lap of a goddess. Another is methodically brushing dust from his sandals, eyes half-lidded in that zoned-out trance only the road can teach. No one rushes here. Time moves in horse trots and campfire yawns.
A low voice behind the counter begins muttering a route schedule. You can't help but listen in. Akhmim by third moon, Sardis relays at dusk, elephant escort requested for southern trail. Elephants. You smirk. Of course elephants. The Royal Road is long, but the southern extensions, those that wander toward the lush, chaotic edge of India, well, they're a different beast altogether, sometimes literally. Historians still argue whether these eastern branches were official or just tolerated by the empire. Some claim they were rogue trade routes co-opted by clever administrators. Others insist they were core arteries, vital for the spice and sapphire lifeblood of the later Achaemenid period. You prefer the first theory. It's just more believable. Bureaucracy doesn't usually stretch that far without snapping. Someone drops a metal cup. The clatter jolts the room into a brief pause, then fades. The napper in the corner groans but doesn't wake. You stretch your arms overhead, the joints crackling in protest, and decide to step back outside. The town is still there, low sun making everything gleam like it's been lacquered with honey. Market noise swells and dips with the breeze. A child runs past, trailing a stick that drags a squeaky ceramic wheel. His giggle cuts through the air like birdsong. You walk past the spice merchant's stall again, slower this time, letting the aromas play their strange music across your senses. Ginger, pepper, fenugreek, and, yes, more clove. You eye the satchels of dried herbs and remember your old trick. Maybe it's time to bring it back. Need a refill? The merchant asks with a wink, clearly having clocked your long-distance stare. You buy a small pouch and tuck it into your belt. Insurance. Further down, the road forks. Left leads toward a military checkpoint. Right to a guest house and baths. You don't even pretend to hesitate. The bathhouse is quiet, its tall columns stained with time, its copper pipes humming with heat pulled from coals beneath the floor. You undress behind a reed screen and slide into the basin. The water laps around your limbs like the inside of a good dream. You exhale. And it occurs to you, not for the first time, that this whole system, this massive empire-spanning relay, was designed not just with efficiency in mind, but humanity. Rest stations, hot meals, clean water, predictable shelters. These weren't just perks, they were policies. You were expected to survive the journey, preferably with all your limbs still attached and your brain still functioning. It's a stunningly modern concept. You dunk your head beneath the surface, the world going muffled and warm, like being hugged by history itself. You rise again with a gasp and a grin. Back in the changing room, you dry off with a cloth so coarse it could double as a weapon. Your skin sings, half from relief, half from abrasion. You dress, pull your belt tight, and feel a strange lightness. Your scroll is gone. Your hands are empty. You are, for once, not the messenger, but simply you. Outside, twilight settles in like a soft blanket. You find a bench near the square and watch the torches being lit one by one. Each flame catching with a whoosh, flickering for a moment before holding steady. The night smells different than the day. Cooler, slower. It carries notes of charcoal, roasted grain, and, curiously, dried figs. You glance around. Yep, someone's roasting figs on a skewer. You buy 2.
Section 20. Your eyes flutter open before the sun dares rise. For a moment, you lie still, unsure whether you've awakened or simply drifted into a dream of being awake. The ceiling above you looks softer in the dark, and the sounds of sleeping bodies, snuffling, shifting, the occasional throat clearing, blend into a rhythmic hush like waves lapping ashore. You blink again. No dream, just the quiet aftermath of a long, dusty journey. You rise gently,
unwilling to jostle your limbs too harshly. There's a particular reverence to mornings in a Persian courier station. Not quite military, but not quite domestic either. Rituals observed in silence. You roll your shoulders, touch the ground with bare toes, and stretch until your back clicks like dry papyrus. You slip outside without a sound. The sky is in that strange in-between, inky blue above, faint orange at the horizon. The stars are dissolving reluctantly, one by one. A few merchants are stirring, sweeping dust from their thresholds like it's a daily act of defiance. Somewhere, a rooster regrets its life choices. The streets are still yours. You take a slow stroll past the stables, greeting the familiar scents of leather, oats, and horse sweat. One of the mounts whickers softly as you pass. You give her a pat on the flank. She was the one who got you over that miserable salt flat. Smart as a priest and twice as judgmental. Then curiosity tugs at you. Not a command, not a mission, just the simple urge to walk. So you do. You follow the path leading out of town. Not the main road, not the royal one, but a softer, more meandering track between fields and early blooming fig trees. Your boots press into dew-soaked earth. The world is hushed, as though even the grass is trying not to wake the day too soon. And as you walk, you find yourself remembering. Not just this journey, but all of them. The night in Susa when your saddle strap snapped mid-gallop. The old woman in Hecatompylus who fed you lentils with crushed mint and refused payment. The desert wind near Carmania that carried the scent of cinnamon for miles, though no one could ever explain why. And, of course, how could you forget the time your replacement scroll was delivered by camel after a horse fell asleep mid-route? Don't ask. These stories, these tiny frayed threads, make up the greater tapestry of the courier network. Not the one they draw on imperial maps, but the one stitched in memories, half-told jokes, and quiet camaraderie. It's a living organism, this road. One fed by sweat, sarcasm, saddle sores, and sheer stubborn will. Historians still argue whether the Achaemenid system truly laid the groundwork for all future postal routes, whether Rome borrowed it or reinvented it, whether China outpaced it with bamboo-etched efficiency. The truth, as always, is both simpler and blurrier. Systems rise and fall, but human ingenuity, that sticks around. You sit on a low stone near a creek, watching the water trace lazy patterns around mossy pebbles. The air smells of thyme and something floral you can't name. Your fingers brush the satchel at your side, still out of habit, though it carries only spare figs now, a ridiculous luxury. And you smile at that. Not every journey needs a scroll. Not every rider needs a destination. Some days, rare, blessed days, you walk the path simply because it's there. And in that walk, in the hush of dawn and the echo of hoofbeats long past, you carry something more durable than parchment or wax seals. You carry the memory of movement itself. The road, after all, is the oldest story we know, one told in footsteps, tireless messengers, and faint trails of clove that linger long after the wind has turned. Wind down, final 300 words. And now, with the stars fully gone and the morning sun just brushing the hills in soft gold, you stretch once more and let out a long breath, the kind of breath that feels earned, the kind that empties out your chest like a scroll unrolling its final line. Your muscles are warm and loose, your boots resting beside you,